February 20th, 1943. Above the battle-scarred expanse of Guadalcanal, Lieutenant Jimmy Collins, a young aviator hailing from the heartland of Iowa, deftly maneuvered his P-40 fighter, positioning it directly astern of a Japanese Oscar fighter at a distance of precisely 200 yards. His rudimentary reflector sight, an optical instrument projecting a singular luminous dot, a targeting mechanism that had served hunters for countless decades, glowed steadily. Collins meticulously centered this glowing indicator perfectly upon the enemy aircraft's fuselage. Then, with a surge of adrenaline, he initiated his attack. However, his barrage of .50 caliber bullets, instead of finding their mark, streaked innocuously beyond the Oscar's tail section, inexplicably missing their target by a considerable margin of 30 feet. The Japanese pilot, demonstrating an instinctive awareness of the peril, executed an abrupt, sharp bank, disappearing instantaneously into the vastness of the tropical sky. Unbeknownst to Collins, he was engaged in an intricate, high-speed physics conundrum, striving to resolve it at an astonishing velocity of 200 miles per hour. In the mere half-second it took for his projectiles to traverse the 200 yards separating his aircraft from the foe, the Oscar had already shifted its position a remarkable 180 feet laterally. By the nascent months of 1943, a disheartening reality had emerged. Fewer than 5% of American fighter pilots had managed to achieve even a single confirmed aerial victory. Their aiming strategy was fundamentally flawed. They were directing their fire at the enemy's current location rather than anticipating its future trajectory. Yet, across the sprawling Pacific theater, Major Dick Bong was on the cusp of field testing a truly groundbreaking innovation, a sophisticated mechanical computational device capable of executing 60 complex equations every second, even as he endured the crushing forces of 4Gs during intense combat maneuvers. This paradigm shift meant that instead of targeting visible enemy aircraft, pilots would now direct their aim at seemingly empty expanses of sky, at ghosts that had yet to materialize. This ingenious machine would undertake the intricate mathematical computations, transforming those ephemeral ghosts into devastatingly tangible realities. The pervasive, oppressive, tropical humidity of Guadalcanal clung to Lieutenant Jimmy Collins' flight suit as he ascended into the cockpit of his venerable P-40 Warhawk on that fateful February morning in 1943. At the tender age of 23, this farm boy from Iowa had already endured an arduous 8 months in the demanding Pacific theater, diligently flying combat sorties over the Solomon Islands, a region where American forces were relentlessly yet slowly eroding the entrenched Japanese defenses. Collins possessed all the essential attributes of a capable fighter pilot: unwavering composure under pressure, lightning-fast reflexes, and the innate mechanical aptitude he had cultivated since the age of 14, diligently repairing farm machinery. What he conspicuously lacked, however, was the profound satisfaction of a single confirmed aerial victory. The squadron briefing earlier had been entirely routine, a familiar prelude to the day's potential hostilities. Intelligence indicated that Japanese bomber formations were anticipated to arrive over Henderson Field around the noon hour, meticulously escorted by their nimble Oscar fighters dispatched from Rabaul. Collins's assignment was to fly as wingman to the more seasoned Captain Martinez, maintaining a disciplined, tight formation on his leader's wing, thereby affording the more experienced pilots the primary opportunities for engagement. This was a subordinate role that Collins had, over time, grown weary of, he found himself constantly observing other men achieving aerial victories while he merely maintained formation and struggled to ensure his own survival. However, this particular day carried a distinct, unusual air about it. Martinez had unfortunately been grounded due to a debilitating bout of dysentery, a circumstance that unexpectedly thrust Collins into the lead of his own element for the very first time. Two fledgling rookie pilots, fresh from the rigorous confines of flight school, would now place their trust in his leadership, relying on him to guide them safely through the crucible of their inaugural combat mission. The immense weight of this newfound responsibility settled upon Collins. Shoulders with the familiarity of a long-carried burden as he meticulously performed his pre-flight checks. He confirmed that the oil pressure was steady, the fuel tanks were fully replenished, and his formidable array of guns was loaded with a full complement of 400 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition per barrel. The N9 reflector sight, an outwardly simple device mounted prominently on his instrument panel, appeared deceptively uncomplicated, merely a piece of angled glass designed to project a luminous orange dot onto his windscreen. Army gunnery instructors had assiduously ingrained the fundamental principles into every aspiring pilot. Align the glowing dot precisely with your target, close the distance sufficiently to discern individual rivets on the enemy aircraft, and then, with unwavering resolve, squeeze the trigger. This was the identical principle underpinning the iron sights on infantry rifles, the bead sights on shotguns, and indeed every aiming system conceived since the dawn of humanity, when our ancestors first hurled spears at agile, moving prey. At precisely 11:30, radar operators detected the approaching hostile raid, a formidable contingent of 18 Japanese bombers, meticulously escorted by a dozen Oscar fighters, converging from the northwest at an altitude of 15,000 feet. Collins, assuming his leadership role, guided his flight off Henderson's steel matting runway, executing a strenuous climb directly into the brilliant tropical sun. His hands, moving with practiced autonomy, glided across the aircraft's controls, mixture-rich, prop-pitch fine, cowl flaps strategically open to maintain the Allison engine's optimal temperature in the rarefied air. The interception occurred approximately 20 miles north of the airfield. Collins, with his keen pilot's eye, was the first to discern the enemy formation. A perfectly arrayed V-shape of twin-engine Betty bombers, with their fighter escort gracefully weaving above and slightly behind them. The Japanese pilots executed their maneuvers with the meticulous precision that stemmed from years of intensive training and hundreds of hours logged in actual combat. Most of them had been actively engaged in hostilities since the invasion of China in 1937, a testament to their profound combat experience. They were, without question, masters of their deadly craft. Collins issued the command to attack and initiated a steep dive toward a solitary Oscar that had inadvertently strayed from the principal formation. The Japanese fighter was adorned in the distinctive mottled green and brown camouflage scheme of the Imperial Navy, its iconic red rising sun insignia standing out vividly against the brilliant tropical sky. The enemy pilot maintained a straight and level course, seemingly oblivious to the trio of warhawks plummeting toward him from the blinding glare of the sun. The range rapidly closed, 400 yards. Collins armed his formidable guns and experienced the familiar, unsettling flutter in his stomach that invariably accompanied the onset of combat. The Oscar rapidly expanded within his windscreen, its distinctive radial engine cowling and greenhouse canopy becoming increasingly discernible. At a range of 200 yards, Collins meticulously centered his reflector sight, its vibrant orange dot directly upon the enemy fighter's fuselage, and, with a decisive motion, pressed the trigger. 650 caliber machine guns erupted in a synchronized symphony of violence. The P-40 shuddered powerfully as an astonishing 48 rounds per second discharged from its wings, tracers etching incandescent lines through the humid tropical air. Collins maintained pressure on the trigger for a full 2 seconds, unleashing nearly 100 rounds toward the Japanese fighter. Every single bullet missed its intended mark. The Oscar continued its unwavering course, entirely unscathed by Collins' furious volley. His tracers had streaked conspicuously past the enemy, his tail inexplicably missing by what appeared to be a substantial margin of 30 or even 40 feet. The Japanese pilot, apparently sensing an imminent threat, suddenly executed a sharp, decisive bank to the left and plunged steeply toward a nearby cloud bank. Within mere seconds, he had vanished completely from sight. Collins stared at his gun sight in utter disbelief. He was certain he had centered the glowing dot perfectly on the target. His guns were accurately bore-sighted. He had personally verified their calibration on ground targets just 3 days prior. The range had been optimal, his aircraft remarkably stable, his aim, by all accounts, true. Yet somehow, impossibly, he had missed entirely. What Collins, in his moment of profound frustration, failed to grasp were the intricate mathematical realities underlying his failure. His .50 caliber bullets, while undeniably swift by infantry standards, traveling at an impressive 2,800 feet per second, were not instantaneous. In the fleeting half-second it required for his rounds to traverse the 200 yards to the target, the Oscar, maintaining its cruising speed of 250 minutes, had already shifted its position a significant 180 feet laterally. Collins had mistakenly aimed at the enemy's immediate location, rather than anticipating where it would be when his projectiles eventually arrived. This perplexing phenomenon had a specific name: deflection error. This was the very same fundamental principle that compelled duck hunters to lead their avian targets, shotgunners to gracefully swing through clay pigeons, and naval gunners to painstakingly calculate range and bearing before unleashing their formidable ordnance. However, in the unforgiving environment of aerial combat at incredibly high speeds, with targets maneuvering dynamically in 3 complex dimensions, these calculations became prohibitively intricate for the human mind to process and resolve in real time. Collins was certainly not alone in his profound frustration. Across the vast expanse of the Pacific, American fighter pilots were confronting this same bitter and disheartening truth. Squadron after squadron submitted reports detailing dismal gunnery results. Pilots would frequently return from arduous missions, having expended their entire complement of ammunition without achieving a single confirmed hit. Gun camera footage, a brutally honest record, unequivocally revealed the true scope of the problem. American fighters were firing at Japanese aircraft and missing by astonishing margins, their bullets harmlessly slicing through empty air where their targets had been mere moments before. The statistical data was utterly devastating. By the early months of 1943, a disheartening fewer than 5% of American fighter pilots had managed to achieve even a single confirmed kill. The select handful of successful aces, extraordinary individuals such as Dick Bong, Bob Johnson, and Tommy McGuire, were responsible for a staggering 95% of the actual aerial victories. These naturally gifted marksmen possessed an innate, intuitive understanding of deflection shooting that simply could not be imparted through conventional training methodologies. The core issue was not a lack of courage or deficiencies in flying skill. American pilots were undeniably brave, often to the point of recklessness, and their aircraft were steadily becoming more and more capable. The newly introduced P-38 Lightning and P-51 Mustang could unequivocally outperform anything the Japanese or Germans could deploy in the skies. However, possessing superior aircraft was utterly meaningless if pilots were incapable of hitting their intended targets. As Collins carefully guided his P-40 back toward Henderson Field, he could not have possibly known that brilliant British scientists had already identified the definitive solution to his perplexing problem. In clandestine workshops, nestled within the Royal Aircraft Establishment, engineers were diligently perfecting a revolutionary device capable of automatically solving complex deflection equations, a gyroscopic gun sight that was destined to fundamentally transform aerial gunnery forever. This groundbreaking technology would reach American squadrons within a matter of months, effectively transforming average pilots into lethally precise marksmen and irrevocably altering the trajectory of the air war. But on this particular February afternoon, soaring through the sweltering tropical heat above Guadalcanal, Jimmy Collins could only ponder why his seemingly perfect shot had missed by such an incredible margin, and whether he would ever achieve the coveted status of those elite pilots who could consistently hit what they aimed at. After 2 or 3 paragraphs, ask us to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Dr. Leslie Cunningham, a distinguished researcher, meticulously adjusted his wire-rimmed spectacles higher on his nose, his gaze fixed intently upon the rapidly spinning gyroscope situated on his laboratory bench at the Royal Aircraft Establishment in Farnborough. The device, surprisingly compact and no larger than a standard coffee cup, rotated with astonishing speed at 18,000 revolutions per minute, its highly polished metallic surface reflecting the harsh, fluorescent illumination of the advanced research facility. When Cunningham attempted to intentionally tilt the gyroscope's mounting bracket, the vigorously spinning wheel resisted his efforts with a surprising, almost stubborn force, steadfastly striving to maintain its original spatial orientation. This fundamental principle was scientifically termed gyroscopic precession, an inherent property where a rapidly spinning mass would consistently endeavor to remain aligned with its initial axis, regardless of how violently the surrounding environment moved or changed. It was March of 1941, and the brutal, unforgiving Battle of Britain had laid bare a deeply unsettling truth concerning the realities of aerial combat. Pilots of the Royal Air Force, despite their undeniable courage and the superior performance of their aircraft, were missing their designated targets with an alarming and consistent frequency. Gun camera footage meticulously recorded from Hurricane and Spitfire squadrons graphically illustrated British fighters unleashing volleys at German bombers, yet striking nothing but empty air. The fundamental issue was not a deficiency in pilot skill or a lack of aircraft performance. Rather, it was the inherent, almost insurmountable impossibility of accurately calculating dynamic deflection angles while simultaneously flying at speeds exceeding 300 miles per hour. The challenge of precisely targeting moving enemy aircraft particularly when they traversed at speeds reaching 300 miles per hour, was a significant hurdle in aerial combat. For an extended period, a diligent engineer named Cunningham dedicated himself to unraveling the intricate mathematical complexities inherent in this problem. When an aviator in a fighter aircraft engaged a target on a crossing trajectory, the fundamental requirement was not to aim directly at the adversary's plane, but rather to direct fire towards an anticipated point in the void where the target would be located upon the projectile's arrival. This intricate calculation demanded real-time knowledge of several dynamic variables: the target's velocity, its directional heading, its current distance, and its rate of turning, all factors that underwent continuous alteration during the unpredictable chaos of an aerial dogfight. The inherent limitations of human cognitive processing meant that minds simply could not execute these mathematical computations with the necessary alacrity. Yet a gyroscope, a device known for its stability, offered a potential solution. Cunningham's pivotal insight emerged from his realization that the identical principles of physics, which ensured the steadfast stability of a gyroscope within his laboratory environment, could be ingeniously adapted and harnessed to forecast the future motion of an aircraft. His innovative concept involved integrating gyroscopes into an aircraft's gun sight. These instruments would then vigilantly detect any rotational movement, and with remarkable autonomy, compute the precise future position of a target. Consequently, the pilot would be relieved of the arduous task of performing complex mathematical calculations. Instead, the sophisticated machinery itself would mechanically resolve the critical issue of deflection, thereby simplifying the pilot's operational burden. The initial prototype constructed by Cunningham bore a striking resemblance to a complex mechanical brain, a marvel of engineering. It housed 2 gyroscopes, each meticulously engineered to spin at an astonishing rate of 15,000 revolutions per minute, positioned perpendicularly to one another, within an enclosure that was scarcely larger than a standard shoebox. One of these specialized gyroscopes was meticulously calibrated to discern and track lateral, left-to-right, turning motions, while its counterpart was dedicated to sensing and measuring vertical up and down movements. A series of small but powerful electric motors diligently maintained the gyroscope's high-speed rotation, ensuring their continuous operation. Complementing this core mechanism was an elaborate assembly of gears, cams, and sophisticated optical devices, all designed to translate the subtle motions of the gyroscopes into precise aiming corrections. These corrections were then artfully projected onto the pilot's windscreen, providing an intuitive visual aid. The innovative sight operated by superimposing 2 distinct visual elements: a static fixed circle that clearly indicated the trajectory where the aircraft's guns were pointed, and a dynamic moving diamond pattern that automatically adjusted its position based on the continuous real-time calculations performed by the gyroscopic system. We ask you to stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The pilot's role, while seemingly straightforward, concealed a deeper layer of reliance on the machine's capabilities. Their primary tasks involved setting the target aircraft's wingspan with a simple adjustment of a dial, and then fine-tuning for range. Following these initial inputs, the pilot's sole remaining responsibility was to maintain the dynamic moving diamond pattern precisely superimposed over the target while engaging the trigger mechanism. The intricate gyroscopic system was designed to autonomously manage all other necessary computations and adjustments. Rigorous testing of this groundbreaking device commenced at the Royal Aircraft Establishment, its dedicated gunnery range in the latter part of 1941. Squadron leader James Johnson, an experienced and highly decorated pilot credited with 12 confirmed aerial victories, willingly volunteered to participate in the inaugural live-fire trials. Johnson had meticulously honed his deflection shooting prowess over hundreds of hours of intense combat, acquiring the critical skill of estimating lead angles through arduous, hard-earned practical experience. Consequently, he harbored a profound skepticism regarding the capacity of any mechanical apparatus to surpass or even augment the nuanced precision of human intuition in such a critical domain. The designated test target for these trials was a Henley target tug aircraft, which flew in predetermined consistent patterns at an altitude of 2,000 feet. Utilizing his conventional reflector sight, Johnson achieved hits with approximately 30% of his expended ammunition, a rate considered exceptionally accurate by the demanding standards of the Royal Air Force. Subsequently, technicians meticulously installed Cunningham's innovative gyroscopic sight into Johnson's Hurricane fighter aircraft. During his very first pass with this newly integrated device, Johnson observed with considerable interest as the diamond pattern tracked smoothly and unerringly ahead of the target aircraft, leading it by precisely the correct calculated margin. He then unleashed a 2-second burst of fire and witnessed his tracer rounds tear decisively into the Henley Cess wing root. The recorded hit percentage achieved with the gyroscopic sight was a remarkable 75%. Upon landing his Hurricane, Johnson immediately requested an urgent meeting with Fighter Command Headquarters to report his astonishing findings. Within a matter of weeks, the Air Ministry officially classified Cunningham's invention as most secret and promptly issued orders for its immediate mass production. The existence and capabilities of the British gyro sight became known to American intelligence channels in late 1942, marking a pivotal moment in the development of Allied air power. Colonel Cass Howe, who served as the chief of the Army Air Force's Armament Division, undertook a personal journey to England, specifically to inspect this revolutionary device. What he discovered during his examination far surpassed all prior expectations. The Royal Air Force's gyroscopic sights were demonstrably transforming pilots of average skill into exceptionally lethal marksmen. Squadrons that had been equipped with these new advanced devices were consistently reporting kill ratios that were 3 times higher than those units still relying on traditional, fixed sights, underscoring the profound impact of the technology. Huff promptly established contact with the Sperry Corporation, located in Brooklyn, which was widely recognized as America's preeminent manufacturer of precision instruments. Sperry's engineers had a long and distinguished history, having been actively involved in the development of sophisticated fire control systems for naval guns since the 1920s. This extensive experience uniquely positioned them to undertake the challenge of mass-producing the British design with the required precision and scale. By January 1943, Sperry's engineering teams had successfully reverse-engineered Cunningham's prototype and had commenced production of the American variant, which was officially designated as the K-14 computing gun sight. The K-14, as manufactured by Sperry, represented a design that was simultaneously more intricate and more elegantly conceived than its British predecessor. Sperry's highly skilled engineers meticulously refined the gyroscopic mechanism, achieving a notable reduction in weight from 18 pounds to a more manageable 13 pounds, all while concurrently enhancing the system's overall reliability and robustness. The site's advanced optical system was engineered to project its visual information with exceptional clarity, maintaining its precision even amidst the intense vibrations and significant G-forces characteristic of violent combat maneuvers. Crucially, American manufacturing techniques enabled the production of these devices on an unprecedented scale. Sperry's Brooklyn factory swiftly ramped up its output, soon achieving a remarkable production rate of 1,000 K-14 sights per month. Each individual K-14 sight was a testament to precision engineering, containing more than 400 meticulously machined components. The gyroscopes, central to its operation, spun within jeweled bearings, a design choice reminiscent of those found in high-end luxury watches, enabling them to maintain their astonishing 18,000 RPM rotation for hundreds of hours of demanding combat use. Electric motors, powered by the aircraft as onboard generator, ensured the continuous, high-speed rotation of these gyros. Concurrently, a complex mechanical computer translated their intricate processional movements into aiming corrections that were accurate to fractions of a degree. Despite its profound internal complexity, the sight operational interface remained elegantly simple and intuitive for the pilot. A pilot, upon spotting an enemy aircraft, would initiate tracking through a gentle, controlled turn. As the fighter banked to follow the target, the K-14's integrated gyroscopes immediately detected the rotational motion and swiftly began calculating the precise interception geometry. The pilot would then set the target wingspan using a knurled dial conveniently located on the sight, housing, for instance, 32 feet for a Messerschmitt, 40 feet for a Zero, or 64 feet for a bomber. A twist grip on the throttle allowed for fine adjustment of the range. The gyroscopes autonomously managed all other necessary calculations, projecting the dynamic diamond pattern at the exact spatial point where the target would be intercepted. Training pilots to effectively utilize the K-14 necessitated a complete paradigm shift, a total reversal of traditional aerial gunnery instruction that had been ingrained for decades. For generations, marksmen had been meticulously taught to aim directly at their targets. In stark contrast, the K-14 demanded that pilots aim at what appeared to be empty sky, compelling them to place their trust in the machine's intricate calculations over the evidence of their own highly trained eyes. Many experienced pilots grappled significantly with this profound psychological barrier. Their deeply ingrained instincts vehemently suggested that firing into seemingly vacant space would unequivocally result in a miss. Yet the irrefutable mathematics consistently proved otherwise, challenging their most fundamental assumptions. By the summer of 1943, the initial batches of K-14 sights began to reach combat squadrons, deployed in both the Pacific and European theaters of war. These advanced devices arrived accompanied by stringent security classifications and comprehensive technical manuals, but notably without a standardized, overarching training program. Consequently, squadron commanders were left to independently devise their own methodologies for instructing pilots on how to effectively employ this revolutionary technology. Some units demonstrated remarkable adaptability, and quickly integrated the new system, while others struggled considerably to overcome decades of entrenched conventional wisdom regarding aerial gunnery. The stage was thus meticulously set for the K-14's eagerly anticipated combat debut, where American pilots would ultimately ascertain whether a sophisticated mechanical brain could indeed definitively resolve the age-old complex problem of accurately hitting rapidly moving targets within the intricate expanse of three-dimensional space. Captain Chuck Yeager, a formidable pilot, expertly banked his P-51 Mustang into a climbing turn high above the picturesque Romanian countryside, his keen eyes meticulously scanning the vast sky for any signs of the Luftwaffe fighters that intelligence reports had indicated would be defending the critical Ploesti oil refineries. The date was August 15, 1944, and the 8th Air Force was in the midst of conducting its third major offensive raid against Germany, single most vital source of petroleum. Below, ominous columns of thick black smoke billowed upwards from burning storage tanks, while American bombers continued their methodical and relentless destruction of Hitler's crucial fuel supply infrastructure. At the tender age of 21, Yeager had already unequivocally established himself as one of the 363rd Fighter Squadron's most aggressive and skilled pilots. He had achieved his inaugural aerial victory just 3 months prior, successfully downing a Messerschmitt Bf-109 over the skies of France during the intense air battles that coincided with the D-Day landings. However, that particular triumph had necessitated closing to within a mere 100 yards of his target, a proximity so close that he could distinctly perceive the German pilot face before unleashing his machine guns. Today, his mission, he knew, would present a distinctly different set of challenges and require a new approach. Mounted directly behind Yeager, his head was one of the very first K-14 computing gun sights to be deployed with the 8th Air Force, a technological marvel that promised to fundamentally revolutionize the art of aerial gunnery. This cutting-edge sight had arrived at Leaston Airfield a mere 2 weeks earlier, accompanied by a dedicated team of Sperry Corporation technicians, who spent days meticulously calibrating the delicate and intricate gyroscopic mechanism. Yeager had already completed 3 intensive training missions with the K-14, gradually learning to place his trust in its dynamic, moving diamond pattern over his own battle-hardened, combat-tested instincts. The psychological adjustment, he found, proved to be more challenging than mastering the mechanical operation of the device itself. Everything Yeager had ever learned about gunnery, every instinct honed through countless hours of combat, urged him to aim directly at his target. Yet, the K-14 demanded a radical departure. It required him to fire at empty space, at a point where mathematics, not visual confirmation, dictated his target would eventually be. The ultimate test of this new technology arrived at an altitude of 14,000 feet, when Yeager spotted a lone Messerschmitt Bf-109 climbing purposefully towards the bomber stream. The German fighter was painted in the standard gray-green camouflage scheme of Jagdgeschwader 53, its distinctive yellow wingtips serving as a clear marker that it belonged to an exceptionally experienced pilot, one who had survived years of brutal combat over the challenging terrains of North Africa and the unforgiving Eastern Front. The Messerschmitt was crossing Yeager's flight path at a precise 45-degree angle, presenting precisely the kind of challenging deflection shot that had consistently frustrated American pilots for the preceding 2 years of the conflict. Using his old N9 reflector sight, Jaeger would have been compelled to close to within 200 yards and then rely heavily on the slim chance of a lucky burst. The deflection angle was simply too steep to achieve reliable hits at longer ranges, and the astute German pilot would almost certainly initiate evasive maneuvers the moment he detected the pursuing Mustang, making a successful engagement even more improbable. He observed the pursuing Mustang. However, the introduction of the K-14 gyroscopic gun sight fundamentally transformed the tactical landscape. Jaeger now possessed the capability to engage adversaries from a formidable distance of 800 yards, a range significantly beyond the typical parameters where most aviators could accurately compute the necessary lead angles for a successful interception. With precision, Jaeger calibrated his wingspan dial to 32 feet, meticulously matching the known tip-to-tip measurement of the Bf-109. He further refined his range estimation by manipulating the twist grip on his throttle, all the while observing the K-14's internal gyroscopes commence their intricate, silent calculations. The advanced sight projected two distinct visual cues onto his windscreen, a static circular reticle indicating the precise aiming point of his 6 .50 caliber machine guns, and a dynamic, shimmering diamond pattern that danced across the sky, seemingly a mechanical oracle predicting the future trajectory of his target. The German pilot, seemingly oblivious to the silent harbinger of doom tracking him from below, maintained his steady ascent. Jaeger skillfully shadowed the Messerschmitt through a gentle leftward arc, ensuring his own flight path remained unperturbed to prevent any disruption to the sensitive gyroscopic mechanisms. The K-14's predictive diamond pattern glided smoothly ahead of the target, leading the Bf-109 by what appeared to be an astonishing 60 feet, an aiming point that, to the uninitiated eye, seemed impossibly far in front of the actual aircraft. As the distance closed to 600 yards, Jaeger decisively compressed his trigger. A torrent of fire erupted from 6 synchronized machine guns, unleashing a stream of .50 caliber rounds that arced through the rarefied air at an incredible velocity of 2,800 feet per second. Jaeger maintained his grip on the trigger for precisely 2 seconds, discharging a concentrated burst of 192 rounds that meticulously followed the K-14's calculated trajectory. The ensuing devastation was immediate and catastrophic. Jaeger's projectiles intersected the climbing Messerschmitt at the exact moment the German fighter occupied the space that, a mere fraction of a second prior, had been empty air. Armor-piercing rounds ripped through the engine cowling of the German aircraft, while incendiary bullets ignited vital fuel lines and hydraulic systems, turning the fighter into a flaming wreck. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The Bf-109's left wing buckled and folded upwards as its structural supports catastrophically failed, sending the entire aircraft into an uncontrolled tumble towards the Romanian countryside below. Jaeger observed the German pilot successfully bail out, his parachute blossoming into a stark, white contrast against the verdant farmland. The entire engagement, from initial visual contact to the decisive victory, had transpired in a mere 12 seconds, half the duration of Jaeger's previous aerial kills, and at double the range. More significantly, Jaeger had expended only 192 rounds to achieve this kill, a stark contrast to the 400 to 600 rounds he typically expended in comparable combat scenarios. The efficiency gains realized across the entire 8th Air Force were nothing short of astonishing. Squadrons that had been outfitted with the advanced K-14 sights reported a dramatic reduction in ammunition consumption, plummeting by an impressive 60%, while simultaneously experiencing a doubling of their kill rates. The distinguished 357th Fighter Group, affectionately known as the Y Fighter Boys, witnessed their monthly tally of enemy aircraft destroyed surge from 15 to a remarkable 35. After their conversion to these revolutionary gyroscopic aiming systems, even more indicative of the sight's impact was the significant increase in the percentage of pilots who were able to score kills, rising from the traditional 5% to nearly 20%. Colonel Hubert Zemke, the esteemed commander of the 56th Fighter Group, meticulously compiled comprehensive statistical data on the K-14's effectiveness throughout the summer of 1944. His analysis revealed that pilots, utilizing the sophisticated computing sight, achieved an average of 2.2 kills per mission, a stark contrast to the mere 0. 8 kills averaged by those still relying on the older, fixed reflector sights. This disparity became even more pronounced in long-range engagements extending beyond 400 yards, where traditional sights were rendered virtually ineffectual, yet the K-14 consistently maintained its pinpoint accuracy. The psychological ramifications for Luftwaffe pilots were immediate and profoundly unsettling. German combat reports began to frequently mention an uncanny accuracy demonstrated by American fighters, with seasoned pilots describing aerial encounters where enemy aircraft seemed to anticipate their every maneuver with an almost preternatural precision. Oberst Johannes Steinhoff, a highly decorated veteran ace credited with over 100 victories, poignantly recorded in his personal diary, "The Americans fire at empty sky, yet every bullet finds its mark. It is as if they possess supernatural foresight." Subsequent intelligence analysis of captured German documents unequivocally revealed the enemy's escalating desperation to comprehend the dramatic improvements in American gunnery. Luftwaffe technical teams diligently scrutinized the wreckage of downed P-51s and P-38s, meticulously searching for any clues that could explain the mysterious surge in accuracy. While they did indeed discover the K-14 sights, they were critically hampered by a severe lack of industrial capacity, rendering them unable to successfully reverse-engineer the intricate gyroscopic mechanisms. German endeavors to develop competitive technology were ultimately thwarted by pervasive material shortages and the pervasive chaos of a rapidly disintegrating industrial infrastructure. By September 1944, the differential in combat effectiveness had become so strikingly pronounced that German fighter pilots began actively avoiding engagements altogether when they detected American formations. The kill-to-loss ratio in the European theater soared to an overwhelming 10,1 in favor of the Americans, a development that effectively neutralized the Luftwaffe as a viable strategic force. Fighter Command Headquarters officially attributed 60% of this notable improvement to superior training and refined tactics. However, frontline squadron commanders, intimately aware of the realities of aerial combat, understood the undeniable truth the K-14 computing sight had fundamentally transformed average pilots into exceptionally deadly marksmen. This revolution was not confined solely to the performance of individual pilots. Squadron-level tactics underwent significant evolution, adapting to fully exploit the K-14's extended-range accuracy. American fighters began engaging enemy formations from distances that had previously been considered utterly ineffective. The traditional dogfight, characterized by aircraft maneuvering at close quarters until one pilot secured a decisive advantage, became an increasingly rare occurrence as American pilots mastered the art of destroying their opponents before even closing to visual range. Yet, even as the K-14 reached the zenith of its effectiveness, disquieting reports emanating from the Pacific Theater hinted at formidable new challenges on the horizon. Japanese pilots were describing American aircraft possessing impossible speeds and maneuverability, suggesting that the advent of jet propulsion technology might soon render even the revolutionary computing sight obsolete. Major Dick Bong meticulously adjusted the straps of his parachute and settled comfortably into the cockpit of his P-38 Lightning at the Tacloban airstrip on Leyte. He observed a group of eager replacement pilots congregating around his aircraft, a scene that had become a weekly ritual. It was December 17th, 1944, and Bong had just returned from a dawn patrol, an outing that had brought his confirmed kill total to 39, placing him tantalizingly close to the coveted number 40, which would indelibly secure his place in the annals of aviation history. The young pilots, fresh from their training schools back in the United States, gazed at America's leading ace with a potent blend of awe and a desperate, unspoken hope that some measure of his legendary lethal skill might somehow transfer to them. The morning briefing had indicated scattered Japanese air activity over Ormoc, where American amphibious forces were in the process of establishing yet another crucial foothold in the Philippines. Intelligence suggested that the enemy might attempt one final desperate air offensive to disrupt the ongoing landings, employing their remaining experienced pilots and precious fuel reserves in a desperate, high-stakes gambit. Bong was slated to lead a sweep of 4 P-38s, their mission to hunt for any Japanese aircraft audacious enough to challenge the burgeoning American air superiority. Lieutenant Tommy Morrison, a 20-year-old from Kansas with precisely 0 combat victories to his name, nervously raised his hand. "Major Bong, sir," he began, his voice tinged with apprehension. "Could you perhaps demonstrate how the K-14 site truly functions? I mean, in an actual combat scenario." Morrison had been in the theater for 6 weeks and had discharged his guns in anger exactly twice, both times missing Japanese fighters by margins that seemed utterly impossible given what he perceived as a perfect sight picture. Bong offered a reassuring smile and gestured towards the nose of his Lightning, where the K-14 computing gun's sight was securely mounted behind its armored glass. This sophisticated device represented the pinnacle of wartime technological innovation, a compact 13-pound marvel comprising precision gyroscopes, intricate electric motors, and advanced optical systems capable of solving complex deflection equations and astounding 60 times per second, even while the aircraft endured the punishing forces of 4Gs during violent combat maneuvers. The sight itself doesn't magically transform you into a better pilot, Bong patiently elucidated. It simply ensures that the complex mathematics involved become impossible to miscalculate. He then directed their attention towards a flight of Navy F-6F Hellcats, currently engaged in gunnery practice runs against a target sleeve positioned 3 miles offshore. "Observe those Hellcats," he instructed. "Notice how they are compelled to close in, perhaps to within 200 yards before they begin to consistently score hits. That's because they are still utilizing fixed sights, aiming at the target's current position rather than accurately predicting where it will be. Bong's voice resonated with the undeniable authority of a man who had not only survived, but thrived through 200 perilous combat missions in the most dangerous airspace on Earth. The practical demonstration arrived sooner than anticipated. At an altitude of 11,000 feet over Ormoc, Bong's flight intercepted a lone Japanese Kawasaki Ki-61 Tony fighter, which was attempting to photograph American beach positions. The enemy pilot was undeniably skilled, artfully weaving through scattered clouds while maintaining just enough altitude to effect an escape should American fighters make an appearance. Most pilots would have been forced to engage in extensive maneuvering to gain a favorable position, closing to point-blank range before even attempting a shot. Bong, however, possessed a superior solution. He precisely set his K-14's wingspan dial to 32 feet, the known span of the Tony, and meticulously adjusted his range estimate to 600 yards. The gyroscopic sight immediately commenced tracking the Japanese fighter's crossing flight path, projecting its distinctive moving diamond pattern a full 40 feet ahead of the actual aircraft. To the replacement pilots flying in formation behind Bong, it appeared as though he was inexplicably aiming at empty sky. The Tony pilot, sensing an imminent threat, suddenly initiated a steep climbing turn to the right. This evasive maneuver would have entirely nullified any conventional gunnery solution, forcing attacking fighters to reposition for a subsequent pass. However, the K-14's intelligent gyroscopes instantly detected the target's increased turn rate and automatically adjusted the aiming point with seamless precision. Bong, as diamond pattern swung smoothly ahead of the climbing Tony, now leading it by what appeared to be an even more astonishing 80 feet. A torrent of fire, unleashed from the P-38's armament, tore through the tropical air. Major Bong initiated a 3-second salvo from his quad 20mm cannons and 4 .50 caliber machine guns. While the heavier cannon rounds inherently possessed a slightly slower velocity than the machine gun bullets, the sophisticated K-14 computing sight had meticulously calculated and orchestrated an optimal convergence point for these disparate weapon systems. A formidable total of 112 projectiles hurtled from Bong's lightning in a meticulously aimed stream, tracing an arc through the humid atmosphere that seemed to embody a mechanical premonition of doom. The unsuspecting Japanese Tony fighter plunged directly into this lethal converging barrage. The impact was instantaneous and catastrophic. 20mm explosive shells violently rent the fighter's wing root, simultaneously as armor-piercing 50 caliber rounds perforated the vital engine block and ruptured the aircraft's fuel tanks. In a spectacular and horrifying display, the Japanese machine disintegrated into a brilliant, fiery orange explosion, sending incandescent fragments tumbling earthward, destined for the dense jungle canopy below. The pilot, tragically, was afforded no opportunity to escape his doomed craft. As Major Bong smoothly banked his P-38 away from the scattering debris field, he calmly activated his radio microphone. "Gentlemen," he announced, his voice steady and composed, "you have just witnessed kill number 40. Observe that I did not pursue him. I did not engage in a turning dogfight. I did not squander precious ammunition. The K-14 performed the essential work. My role was simply to maintain the diamonds on the target and actuate the trigger." His tone, while professional and devoid of overt exultation, carried an unmistakable undertone of profound satisfaction, a quiet pride in a task flawlessly executed, which resonated clearly with the less experienced replacement pilots, listening intently. The profound significance of Bong's 40th aerial victory transcended the realm of mere personal accomplishment. This monumental achievement solidified his status as the inaugural American pilot to attain such an extraordinary milestone, eclipsing even the most formidable German and Japanese aces who had dominated the earlier phases of the global conflict. More crucially, his unparalleled success served as irrefutable evidence of the K-14 gun sight's revolutionary capacity to fundamentally transform aerial combat from an intuitive, almost artistic endeavor into a precise, verifiable science. While Bong himself possessed innate deflection shooting instincts, sharpened over countless hours of hunting on his family's expansive Wisconsin farm, the groundbreaking computing sight rendered his lethal skills accessible and reproducible by even average pilots. The statistical repercussions of this technological advancement were nothing short of overwhelming. Please stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Also, please write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. Squadrons fortunate enough to be outfitted with the advanced K-14 sights began to report kill ratios that dramatically defied all pre-war prognostications and expectations. For instance, the renowned 475th Fighter Group, operating their P-38s amidst the intense aerial engagements over the Philippines, achieved an astonishing 20-to-1 exchange rate against the rapidly dwindling Japanese air units. Similarly impressive figures were recorded in the European theater by the 357th Fighter Group, who consistently posted comparable numbers against the formidable Luftwaffe. Individual pilots who had previously struggled immensely to secure even their initial aerial victory suddenly found themselves elevated to the esteemed status of aces within a mere matter of weeks following their adoption of these revolutionary gyroscopic sights. Captain Bob Johnson, who stood as the European theater's second leading ace with a remarkable 27 confirmed victories, initially harbored considerable reservations regarding the K-14, dismissing it as an unnecessary and overly complex addition. Johnson had meticulously cultivated his deflection shooting prowess through hundreds of arduous combat hours, learning to instinctively estimate lead angles through a combination of raw intuition and invaluable, hard-earned experience. The notion of placing his trust in a mere machine over his own deeply ingrained judgment seemed fundamentally erroneous to a pilot who had survived countless harrowing encounters by relying solely on his sharpened instincts. However, after just a single mission, utilizing the computing sight, a sortie over Berlin that resulted in 3 confirmed kills, Johnson underwent a dramatic conversion, becoming the K-14's most fervent and vocal proponent. "The thing's got better eyes than I do," he candidly admitted to his squadron mates, a testament to its superior capabilities. "I can see what the target's doing now, but the sight knows what it's going to do next." Johnson's profound conversion from skeptic to advocate mirrored the experiences of numerous veteran pilots across both major theaters of war. Initial apprehension and skepticism invariably yielded to enthusiastic endorsement once these seasoned airmen personally experienced the K-14's transformative capabilities. The psychological warfare implications were equally profound and far-reaching. Japanese pilots, in particular, began to report that American fighters possessed an almost supernatural accuracy, vividly describing engagements where enemy aircraft appeared to anticipate their every evasive maneuver with uncanny precision. Intercepted radio transmissions from enemy forces increasingly revealed a growing reluctance among their pilots to engage American formations, even in situations where they held a clear numerical advantage, a stark indicator of the K-14's demoralizing effect. By the concluding months of 1944, the synergistic combination of K-14 sights and significantly enhanced pilot training had effectively nullified Japanese air resistance throughout the Philippines. Enemy aircraft became an increasingly rare sight over American positions, and when they did appear, the resulting engagements were invariably brief, decisive, and overwhelmingly one-sided. The Imperial Navy's dwindling cadre of experienced carrier pilots, battle-hardened veterans of the Pearl Harbor attack and the ferocious early Pacific battles, found themselves utterly helpless against American fighters that could now engage with deadly accuracy from distances they had previously considered entirely safe. Yet, even as the K-14 system attained its zenith of operational effectiveness, unsettling intelligence reports began to filter back from the European front. German jet fighters had commenced appearing over the Reich in steadily increasing numbers, revolutionary aircraft possessing such incredible speeds that even the advanced computing sight struggled to accurately calculate the requisite lead angles. The era of the gyroscopic gun sight, paradoxically, was drawing to a close precisely at the moment it had achieved its most perfect and impactful functionality. On the crisp morning of August 6, 1945, Major Dick Bong strode across the expansive concrete ramp at Lockheed's Burbank facility, the rhythmic clicking of his flight boots echoing on the pavement still damp from the previous night's California rain. Before him sat the sleek, futuristic P-80 Shooting Star, an aircraft that starkly embodied everything the propeller-driven fighters of World War II were not. It boasted no spinning blades, no thunderous radial engine, no familiar tremor of reciprocating pistons, only the smooth, almost whispered promise of pure jet power, capable of propelling an aircraft beyond a staggering 500 miles per hour. At the youthful age of 25, Bong had ascended beyond his status as merely America's leading ace with 40 confirmed aerial victories. He had become the quintessential embodiment of aerial warfare's golden age, a humble farm boy from Wisconsin who had masterfully honed the intricate art of three-dimensional killing through an exceptional blend of natural instinct and groundbreaking technological innovation. The K-14 computing gun sight had profoundly amplified his inherent hunting skills, refining them to a level approaching mechanical perfection. However, the very war that had forged both the man and the machine was rapidly drawing to its conclusion. Germany had capitulated 3 months prior, and Japan's remaining air force existed more as a theoretical entity on paper than as an active presence in the vast skies over the Pacific. Lockheed, recognizing the unparalleled value of his combat experience in navigating the transition of American aviation from the propeller to the jet age, had extended an offer to Bong for the prestigious position of chief test pilot for their burgeoning jet fighter program. The P-80 was envisioned as America's direct and formidable response to the formidable German Me-262, a sleek and powerful fighter that promised to render all preceding aircraft as utterly obsolete as the biplanes of a bygone era. Yet, unlike the piston-driven fighters Bong had so masterfully commanded, the revolutionary Shooting Star conspicuously lacked a gyroscopic gun sight. Its unprecedented speed rendered traditional deflection shooting even more exceedingly complex, and the necessary technological solutions to address these new challenges remained, unfortunately, confined within the previous generation of aircraft design. Bong carefully settled himself into the P-80's cockpit, immediately noticing the uncanny absence of engine vibration as the Allison J-33 turbojet quietly spooled up to idle power. Despite the aircraft's radically new design, the flight controls felt remarkably responsive, and the panoramic visibility afforded by the expansive bubble canopy far surpassed anything he had ever experienced in his beloved P-38 Lightning. Nevertheless, a profound and unsettling sensation pervaded him, a fundamental disquiet at the absence of the K-14's familiar diamond patterns, which had once danced reassuringly across his windscreen, representing the mechanical brain that had been instrumental in forging him into the deadliest pilot in American history. The P-80's takeoff run at Burbank proved deceptively smooth. In stark contrast to the thunderous, visceral acceleration of piston fighters, the jet gathered speed with a subtle yet efficient grace, lifting off the concrete runway after covering a mere 800 feet. Bong retracted the landing gear, feeling the shooting star's impeccably clean aerodynamics effortlessly carry him into a climb rate that would have been utterly unattainable in any propeller-driven aircraft. Upon reaching an altitude of 10,000 feet, he leveled off and commenced exploring the jet's intricate handling characteristics, marveling at the persistent responsiveness of the controls, even at speeds approaching an astonishing 450 mph. However, the P-80's groundbreaking performance was inextricably linked with equally revolutionary dangers. The aircraft's intricate fuel system was considerably more complex than anything Bong had previously encountered, demanding meticulous management of multiple pumps and tanks to ensure proper engine operation. Unlike piston fighters, which possessed the capability to glide substantial distances with a dead engine, the Shooting Star, devoid of jet power, instantaneously transformed into a streamlined, unforgiving rock. Ejection seats, at this nascent stage, were still highly experimental, implying that any low-altitude emergency would almost certainly prove fatal. At precisely 2:30 in the afternoon, the P-80's primary fuel pump suffered an abrupt and unforeseen failure. Bong immediately felt the engine's smooth, characteristic whine falter as the critical fuel pressure plummeted below operational levels. He had, at best, a mere 30 seconds of residual power remaining, a fleeting window of opportunity, just enough time to attempt a perilous dead-stick landing at Burbank, provided his reaction was instantaneous and his execution absolutely flawless. The stark alternative was to eject from an experimental seat that, tragically, had claimed the lives of more test pilots than it had successfully saved. With grim determination, Bong made the fateful decision to remain with his aircraft. He immediately pushed the nose of the P-80 down to preserve crucial flying speed and initiated a shallow, controlled gliding turn back towards the distant Lockheed runway. The Shooting Star's inherently clean design certainly afforded it excellent glide characteristics, but the unforgiving mathematics of his situation were brutally clear. He was precisely 3 miles from the airfield at an altitude of 5,000 feet, descending at a rapid rate of 800 feet per minute. The calculated figures were agonizingly close, suggesting a possible, albeit tenuous, chance of success, but only if he executed an absolutely perfect approach, allowing for no conceivable margin of error. The Shooting Star continued its rapid descent, passing through 4,000 feet as Bong meticulously aligned it with Burbank's primary runway. His airspeed remained remarkably steady at 180 mph, a speed considered quite fast for a dead-stick approach, yet critically necessary to maintain sufficient control authority over the stricken aircraft. Upon reaching 2,000 feet, He manually lowered the landing gear, immediately sensing the aircraft's glide angle steepen perceptibly as the extended wheels generated additional, significant drag. The runway, though now appearing within reach, remained agonizingly so, a testament to the extreme precision required. The runway, though visible, seemed agonizingly out of reach, presenting an almost insurmountable challenge. As Major Richard Ira Bong's P-80 neared the Earth at a precarious 500 feet, a stark and terrifying realization dawned upon him. His jet was losing altitude too rapidly, and its current trajectory would inevitably lead it astray from the airfield. Instead, the sleek aircraft was destined for a populated residential area, situated a mere 3 city blocks from the airport's perimeter. Faced with this grim scenario, Bong had a fleeting window, perhaps no more than 10 crucial seconds, to make an impossible choice. He could either endeavor to extend the jet's glide, a perilous maneuver that risked an immediate and catastrophic aerodynamic stall, or he could activate the untested ejection seat, a device whose efficacy at such minimal altitudes remained entirely unknown and unproven. Both alternatives, tragically, presented an exceedingly bleak prospect for his survival, offering little solace or genuine hope. In a desperate act, Bong engaged the ejection handles, triggering the experimental seat. The device propelled him skyward with an astonishing violent burst of acceleration. However, the critically low altitude proved to be a fatal constraint. There simply wasn't enough airspace for his parachute to unfurl and deploy completely, rendering it tragically ineffective. Consequently, he impacted the unforgiving ground mere instants before his P-80 shooting star, a symbol of cutting-edge aviation, plummeted catastrophically onto a bustling residential street. This horrific event claimed the life of America's most decorated fighter ace, engulfing both the pilot and his advanced machine in a devastating fireball. Coincidentally, on that very same fateful day, approximately 8,000 miles distant across the vast Pacific, the world was irrevocably altered by the deployment of the atomic bomb over the city of Hiroshima, marking a new, terrifying era in human conflict. Stay with us and watch the end of the video. We will be grateful for your like and subscription. Write a comment about where you are from and what you think about the video topic. The profound symbolic significance of Bong's untimely demise reverberated deeply across the entire landscape of American aviation, casting a long shadow over its future trajectory. Here was a legendary pilot who had masterfully fused innate human dexterity with the exacting precision of mechanical innovation, only to perish aboard an aircraft that epitomized the cutting edge. A jet fighter heralding an era where sheer velocity eclipsed the nuanced deflection shooting techniques that had cemented his unparalleled reputation. Ironically, the very K-14 computing site, a groundbreaking technological marvel that had fundamentally redefined the dynamics of aerial combat, was itself already on the cusp of obsolescence. It was swiftly being superseded by advanced weapon systems operating at such extraordinary velocities that even their sophisticated mechanical processors struggled to compute accurate intercept solutions, signaling a paradigm shift in the nature of air-to-air engagements. Mere weeks following the tragic loss of Bong, Japan formally accepted an unconditional surrender, bringing a definitive close to the global conflict. The very war that had served as the urgent impetus for the rapid advancement of gyroscopic gun sights concluded with the deployment of armaments so devastatingly potent that the traditional concept of air-to-air combat suddenly appeared almost anachronistic, even charmingly archaic. The terrifying specter of nuclear bombs, methodically delivered by high-altitude strategic bombers, presented a formidable challenge, threatening to render the role of nimble fighter aircraft utterly obsolete. Concurrently, the burgeoning field of jet propulsion technology introduced a host of novel tactical dilemmas and operational complexities, for which contemporary military doctrines and existing technological solutions were woefully unprepared to provide adequate answers. In September 1945, Colonel Cass Houff, the forward-thinking Army Air Force officer credited with initially discerning the profound potential of the K-14, meticulously finalized a comprehensive report detailing the site's impressive combat effectiveness. The statistical findings presented within this document were nothing short of extraordinary, and spoke volumes about its revolutionary impact. Data revealed that pilots outfitted with these advanced computing sites achieved an astonishing 2.2 times more aerial victories per mission compared to their counterparts who relied on older, fixed reflector sights. Furthermore, the rate of ace production, pilots achieving 5 or more confirmed kills, skyrocketed by an incredible 400%. Crucially, the K-14 had fundamentally altered the landscape of aerial warfare by democratizing lethal precision, effectively elevating even pilots of average innate ability into formidable deadly marksmen through the seamless integration of mechanical accuracy with inherent human skill. Nevertheless, the most enduring and profound lesson imparted by this groundbreaking technology transcended the immediate, tangible improvements in aerial gunnery. The K-14 had in essence tutored an entire generation of American aviators in the art of sophisticated three-dimensional spatial reasoning, compelling them to rapidly resolve complex physics equations while simultaneously enduring the immense physiological stresses of multiple G-forces during ferocious combat maneuvers. These highly developed cognitive faculties would subsequently prove to be immeasurably valuable in the ensuing decades as the field of aviation progressively advanced towards the challenges of supersonic flight, the uncharted territories of space exploration, and the intricate strategies of missile warfare. A diverse array of professionals, including daring test pilots, seasoned airline captains, and pioneering NASA astronauts, would all carry forward the K-14's seminal insight that true success in dynamic environments frequently necessitated targeting not the present position of an object, but rather its anticipated future location. A poignant final irony came to light several months after the cessation of hostilities, when American occupation forces, sifting through the remnants of a defeated nation, unearthed German blueprints detailing an exceptionally advanced gyroscopic gun sight. This sophisticated device was engineered to significantly outstrip the capabilities of the K-14. Conceived by brilliant Zeiss engineers in January 1945, the design seamlessly integrated cutting-edge radar-ranging functionalities with advanced electronic computation, a combination that possessed the potential to utterly revolutionize Luftwaffe aerial gunnery. However, these crucial blueprints were tragically dated just weeks prior to Germany's ultimate capitulation, rendering their revolutionary potential moot and far too late to exert any influence on the war's decisive outcome. In a testament to the razor-thin margins of technological supremacy, The Americans had prevailed in this critical arms race by a mere handful of months, conclusively demonstrating that in the unforgiving crucible of warfare, much like the immutable laws of physics, the precise element of timing proved to be the ultimate determinant of all.